Marc Nager, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. This Startup Week has been really dynamic here, and I'm glad you could take some time to talk with us. Tell us, have you been involved with Startup Week for a number of years?
I've been involved with Startup Week ever since the very beginning. So my organization in my previous life was actually called Up Global, the parent company. And we helped scale and professionalize Startup Weeks and Startup Weekends. And we actually ran Startup America as well. But we scaled those events all over the world.
So how important do you think this is to Colorado, this particular event is to Colorado for the founders community?
I mean, this is the only time of the year where you can come to one place and get a showcase of all of the great activity, the leaders, the founders, the supporters, the service providers, all come together, and you can so efficiently plug into everything that's actually happening. And I think Colorado is such a collaborative environment that you have everybody showing up truly with that give first ethos. So I think the power of that, especially, with that anchor and the foundation of the give first ethos, it's just tangible. And year after year, you hear so many profound stories of people meeting their co-founder, meeting an investor, a new customer, whatever it is, just here in the course of a week over, hundreds of free events.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And sometimes place does matter. You can do things digitally, but being in the same place, there's something magical about it.
Look, I've been in startup communities all around the world, and Colorado truly has a special culture and mix of ingredients and leaders. So we're very fortunate here.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of fascinated with what you've done with what is called Startup Weekend. Can you tell me the origin of that? And it's kind of exploded.
Sure. It's been an event series that started in about 2007. Actually, the original idea came from a gentleman named Andrew Hyde in Boulder. And the whole idea was, could you learn to start a business in a weekend? And I was involved in the very early ones, and we took that idea. And it turned out it's not about actually building a company in the weekend, but it's about learning that process. I actually got to go to business school. Turns out when you have customers wanting to pay you money and you turn around as an entrepreneur and you say, what are the first steps? How do I find a lawyer? How do I find investors? How do I even file? Should I be a C Corp or an S Corp or an LLC, right? How do you answer those questions? Turns out a community, having a community that you can turn to just share that advice and that experience in a really fluid, quick way is what accelerates that 0 to 1 for startups and startup communities. And so that was the essence of Startup Weekend and what we could kind of package around people's ideas and their ambition and then scale out around the world.
So when you started with this great idea of answering a lot of the questions that people don't even know what to ask.
Yep.
And then what happened? How did it explode globally?
Well, turns out entrepreneurship is one of the most, universally profound and interesting things, right? I would say, most of capitalism and democracy has been built on the heels of entrepreneurship, right? And so this culture of problem solving is also something just innate to human nature. How do you solve problems? How do you create value for yourself, your family, your community, your neighbors, right? I think we're just so hardwired to do it. And early on, we kind of tapped into that and we built a model where if you were interested in organizing, you had to attend one. And so if you've attended one, we helped support you to organize one wherever you were on the planet. And then if you've organized one, then you could facilitate one. So this is the catch, actually. The real magic came, every event was required to bring in a facilitator who'd seen and done this in their hometown in different places around the globe. And so you ended up with this amazing cross-pollination and perspective entrepreneurship that created just such a unique shared experience, whether you were in Malaysia or in the Middle East, or you were here in Montana or Colorado.
It's interesting hearing about that, because I think that Startup Week is so community-centric and community-created to put into the mechanism kind of this progression of you've done it once, then you'd go to this, and then you become a facilitator, or you have a facilitator come in, is a really interesting way to gain momentum.
Exactly.
So you are headquartered humanly, we call it living,
yes.
In Durango, Colorado.
Correct.
And you've been in that area, but not in Durango for a really long time. You've been in Durango for a couple years. I'm fascinated by startups, founders, entrepreneurs in rural areas. Can you tell me a little bit about what that looks like outside of the Front Range?
Yeah, absolutely. So living in Southwest Colorado, number one, it's just a magical place. I grew up in a small town though, and when I graduated high school, the definition of success for me really, explicitly or not explicitly, was to go off and go to school, right? Become a doctor, a lawyer, something. And that definition was how fast and how far you can get away. Coming from a small town, it's deeply rooted in my DNA to want to live in a small town community and almost feeling like you're pushed away. And the definition of success wasn't being able to stay in your community or even be able to come back necessarily. But I think with the change in entrepreneurship and remote work and being able to truly start businesses anywhere nowadays, we're seeing that cycle actually turn back around on itself. And so the opportunity to come home to your community or your significant other's community or just for quality of life is now something that's completely accessible. I think AI is only accelerating that, by the way. And so to be able to do that from a small town, have a real job, solve big problems in the world, have a career, right? And be able to provide for yourself and your family, not just relying on maybe some local rural, more common or obvious career paths, right? I think that's just a profoundly impactful thing, not for just the people that can do it, for the entrepreneurs, but for the communities themselves. Right, because entrepreneurship in rural communities, it has a different impact. OEDIT here, the Office of Economic Development, has a study called the Rural Jobs Equivalency Study, and they look at the relative impact by GDP of one job created, say, in Denver County versus in, say, La Plata or Florence or any of our other counties in Colorado. And it's anywhere between basically like 15 to 1 and 30 to 1 in terms of those impacts. So, for example,
that's pretty amazing. I've had a couple conversations in the last few weeks centering around like building ecosystems that is basically short supply chains where you're buying from your neighbors and you're doing business with your neighbors.
Exactly.
And so I look at that, and if you look at rural Colorado, I feel like we're getting to a maturity of broadband build out. Mm-hmm. And with that comes digital nomads coming in.
Exactly, yeah.
And one of the things that I get concerned about is people who grew up in that small town having an opportunity to participate in the economy in that same way. How do you look at that coming from you've been in Ridgeway and Durango, how do you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity to live anywhere and again, build and work on, national, regional, global companies brings a different level of skills. And what we've seen, the average median income in rural areas in Colorado is roughly half that in most counties as it is to the Front Range in the urban corridors. And so all of a sudden, if you build up these jobs that are related to startups in small towns like Ridgeway or Durango, the impact that you can have on things like housing affordability. We need some of the regulatory, right? Don't get me wrong, we need affordable housing to be front and center. But if we can also raise the average income of the jobs that are there locally, right? We can address things like housing affordability from how you access them because of the income, the wealth that is actually present.
So it's actually supporting the middle class.
It's supporting the middle class in a huge way, and economic mobility in a huge way, because
So what do you see that community leaders should do for people who grew up there, that started there, not moving in? How do you ensure that your children are going to have the right educational opportunities in order to participate and stay in the town?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, number one, being welcoming. I think it is a cultural shift from the way we've looked at our communities and economic development historically, but things like remote workers. We're learning that well over 10% of many local rural towns' GDPs is actually coming from remote workers. And many communities still have this kind of, what do they bring to our community? What value do they add? And the truth is they bring, of course, their wealth, financial resources, but the network, right? To wherever they're working and whoever they're working with around the world, as well as their experience, right? Because we have a number of companies now in our fund that run things like internship programs, or in Grand Junction, working to create a whole cybersecurity program with Mesa University, right? Or Agile Aerospace, doing career days, teaching kids about literally rocket science in Durango, right? So those intangible benefits as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned Grand Junction. We've got a lot of Western Slope towns that it seems like there's more collaboration going on between towns. Is that just my imagination, or are you seeing that happen?
Absolutely, just like we're at Colorado Startup Week, and it's a real galvanizing event for the Front Range. We're doing West Slope Startup Week in October. So we have kind of our own version that brings together all of the communities really across the Western Slope. And so similarly, we have well over 500 people, almost 100 events. So just a scaled down version of what's going on this week here in Denver.
Well, and doesn't Colorado Mesa University do a entrepreneurial day too as well? I'm probably saying it wrong, but.
Exactly, yeah, they have a startup pitch competition, they have an innovation center at Mesa. They've actually hosted the West Slope Startup Week for 2 years before Durango did. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of collaboration and call it like teamwork happening outside of the Front Range in these communities.
It's pretty exciting. I'm sure that your fund is working with some really exciting founders. What are a couple stories that you really like about founders that have started in rural areas of Colorado that you've been able to help?
Oh man, this is my favorite part, because telling our story is really most impactful when you get to hear about the founders we are lucky enough to support. I'll tell you a story of Sarah Hinckley, who started Barnell Precision Agriculture, goes by BOPA, and a family, brother and sister, and her husband, ultimately, who grew up in La Junta, so on farm. Right? So they understood the needs and the challenges of small farmers in Colorado and this country. And they started actually working with robots, autonomous robots. They did some drone surveillance, they did some robots, but they were trying to really arm the local farmers with better ways to compete and better ways to increase their efficiency and their output. So now they're doing weeding robots. They're based out of Florence, Colorado, and they are doing autonomous weeding robots for small and middle-sized farms. And really their mission is about protecting and enhancing America's food supply, right? So this is an example of a company, true insight into a real problem that you might not ever be able to have if you weren't based outside of a metro area, right? And potentially profound impact for the country.
That is really fascinating.
Yeah.
I love to hear those stories, and we have them all over Colorado, in small towns, and I'd love to explore that more in the future.
Exactly, and Sarah's just one of those. We talk about, I have 2 young girls, right? I can point at Sarah as a founder, and my girls can see a role model and say, I want to be like her. Yeah. And that's how we start to rewrite the script for what's possible in these small communities too.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Mark, thanks for taking the time. There's a lot of stuff going on here. I appreciate you carving out some time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the work you guys do.
Thank you.